Okay, today we're talking about fractions. We're going to be looking at fractions of amounts. So when I like to introduce fractions to children as a lesson starter, what I like to do is ask them if they would rather have 1/4 of a cookie or a biscuit or a half of a biscuit, and get them to use this as a discussion point just to see or assess what they already know about fractions. So if they say half, then I'll take out, so Jeff, okay, well, let's just pretend it's a cookie for now. Half of a cookie and show them half, or maybe just give it to someone. And then if I'd ask them what half of a cookie might look like, in which case I might pull out this giant cookie over here, which I'll show you how to make at the end, and cut it and give them 1/4 of this cookie and say, okay, but before you said you'd rather have half of a cookie rather than 1/4. Discuss. So it's just a point of discussion, getting them to see that you can't just compare two fractions without asking or making sure about what the whole is. So here I've cut out 1/4 of the Jaffa cake and 1/4 of the very large cookie. And I think it's important for children to see what 1/4 might look like, or maybe ask them to draw 1/4 and see what kind of things they come up with. So it's nice to compare two different quarters and maybe even cut out the cookie in front of them and ask them, how do they know if something's 1/4, or what does 1/4 look like? So I think it's important that children realise that 1/4 could be two very different sizes, as you can see here. Okay, so when introducing fractions, I like to look at bar models. So I'm using this strip of card or rectangle, and it's going to represent one whole. Now that one whole is equal to 20. So that strip of card, that rectangle in front of me, equals 20. So I'm just showing children at this point that my one whole is equal to 20. And I'm going to share 20. I'm going to split it or share it into equal parts. So I've got 2 equal parts, 3 equal parts, and 4 equal parts. So I've shown them that my whole, which is 20, is split or shared into 4 equal parts. It's important that we show fractions using manipulatives and they can see each equal part, and they could even hold them and move them. Okay, so if we have a look at a question, if the question says, what is 1/4 of 20? So 1/4 of 20, if my whole is equal to 20, just move the question in. So I've got 1/4 of 20. So that's my question. So if I've got my whole is equal to 20, that's why my bar is equal to 20. And that 20 is shared into equal parts. So what I need to do is just have a look and see what the denominator in the question is. And that says 4. So 4 equal parts. And that's why I've got 4 pieces of card to cover up my one whole, my 20. So we call that 4 a denominator, which is the bottom number under, or the bottom digit in the fraction. Okay, so back at the question, we've got 1/4 of 20. My 20 is split into 4 equal parts because that's what the denominator says. So that's 1 out of 4 equal parts, 2 equal parts, 3 equal parts, and the last equal part, 4 equal parts. So that's my denominator there, 4 equal parts. Okay, next we're going to have a look at the numerator. So I want to find out first, what is one of these equal parts worth? So I've got 4 of them, but I just want to know the value of just one of them. So the first step with a question like this is find out how many equal parts there are, and then you want to find out what the value is of one of them. So my whole is 20, and I've shared it into 4 equal parts. And that will tell me the value of one of these equal parts. So 20 divided by 4 is of course equal to 5. And that answer 5 tells me that this one equal part must be equal to 5. But we can also check it. So if I've got my first equal part 5, 10, 15, 20, and my whole is 20, so that is correct. Okay, let's take a look at a question. So what is 1/4 of 20? So we've got our 20 split into 4 equal parts that you can see, and one of these parts is what the question's asking for. So they want 1/4 of 20, so I'm going to take out what they've asking me for. So one part which is equal to 5. So 1/4 of 20 is equal to 5. So 1/4 means 1 out of those 4 equal parts. They want to know what the value is. Okay, the next question asks for 3/4 of 20. So it's the same question, but instead of 1/4, they don't want one of the equal parts. They want instead, because one of the equal parts would be worth 5, they want 3 out of the 4 equal parts. So we've got 4 equal parts in total. So that top number there is actually called a numerator. And the numerator tells us how many equal parts they want. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And that's what the question's asking for. So 5 add 5, or 5 times 3, which is equal to 15. So 3/4 of 20 is equal to 15. So remember, the numerator tells us how many of these equal parts we need to add. Okay, let's say instead of 1/4 or 3/4, the question actually asked us to find 2/4 of 20. So you'd grab 2 of these equal parts, and 5 add 5 is equal to 10. So then 2/4 of 20 would be 10. So remember, the whole is 20. We look at the denominator to find out how many equal parts do we split that whole into. And then the numerator tells us how many of these parts do we need. Okay, let's have a look at another question. So this time I've got my whole, and my whole, or my bar, as you can see, is equal or worth 55. So my whole, or my bar, is equal to 55. So let's have a look at some questions. So I've got 2 questions. The first one says, what is 1/5 of 55? And I want you to have a think. So the whole is 55. I want you to have a think, how many equal parts is my 55 going to be split up into? Whether it's 1/5 or 3/5 of 55. So how many equal parts do we need? So if you take a look at the fraction and take a look at the denominator, you should be able to work out how many equal parts we need. So that's 1 equal part, 2 equal parts, 3 equal parts, 4 equal parts, and then 5 equal parts. So my bar is split into 5 equal parts because the denominator in the question was 5. So the whole is 55, and thereafter 1/5 of 55. So what the question is asking me for now is we need to look at the numerator and first find out what is the value of one of these equal parts. That's the first question you always ask yourself. So what is the value of one of these equal parts? And then we can find out the rest. So remember, the whole is 55, and it's been split, or it's been divided into 5 equal parts. So what is the value of one of these equal parts? Okay, so if you want to look away, and then maybe you can find out or tell me what is one of these equal parts. What is the value of one of these equal parts? And we'll see if we got the same answer. So my whole is 55, and it's being shared into 5 equal parts. So one of these equal parts is, of course, 11. So now that I've worked out what one of these equal parts is, I'm just going to write 11 on this so I remember. So that's my 1 equal part, 2 equal parts, 3 equal parts, 4 equal parts, and 5 equal parts. Okay, obviously it's always good to check, so we can check now. We've got 5 groups, or 5 lots of 11. 11 add 11 add 11 add 11 add 11 is equal to 55. So that seems correct. Okay, once we've checked that, we've checked if one part is worth 11, would the whole be worth 55? We can now have a look at our question. Okay, so the question says, what is 1/5 of 55? So that's a nice, easy question to start us off. They're only asking for 1 out of the 5 equal parts. So we always look at the numerator. So that's 1 out of the 5 equal parts. So the answer is, of course, 11. And then the second question, so the whole is the same, but this time the numerator is different. So it's still split into 5 equal parts, but they want 3 out of the 5 equal parts. So we need to grab 3 of these cards, 1, 2, and 3, just to see what 3/5 of 55 is. So 11 add 11 add 11, or 11 times 3 is equal to 33. Okay, so remember, the denominator of the question tells you how many parts it's split into. In this case, it's 5. And the numerator just tells us, the numerator of the fraction will tell us how many of these equal parts we need to work out the question. Now, another way we could do to work this out is just draw what I've just been doing with the bar model. So I've drawn one whole, and I'm splitting or sharing that whole into 5 equal parts. So this is just a rough sketch. So remember, the whole, all of it, is worth 55. And I'm colouring in the numerator. So it's 1/5 of 55, and that's equal to 11, just to help me draw and understand the question. And then for the second one, what you would do for 3/5 of 55, you'd draw exactly the same, but this time you might shade in 3 out of the 5 boxes. So feel free, even if you work out the question, just to draw it and just do a pictorial sort of picture to represent the question. And remember, we always, as a first step, find out one equal part. Okay, so if we had to look at 4/5 of 55, so it's the whole is still 55, and 55 is still split into 5 equal parts. The first thing we would do, just to recap, is 55 divided by 5. And what that would do is tell us what is one of those equal parts. Okay, so in this case, we've got 11 over here. So 55 divided by 5 is 11. One equal part is worth 11. And then your second step would be to find out and look at the numerator. So how many of these equal parts do we need? So in this case, it's 4. So we need 4 out of those equal parts. In the other question before, when the numerator was 3, we needed 3. So we multiplied this by 11. And then in the top question, it was just 1 equal part. So 11 times 1 is 11. So back at the question, we've got 4/5. So if one part is equal to 11, 4 of them would just be 4 times 11. So you multiply it by the numerator, which is 4. So the answer to 4/5 of 55 would be 44. Okay, before we move on to one final question, I just want to focus on one thing. So back at this question, so I've got 2, 3 equal parts, 4 equal parts, and 5 equal parts. And I want you to notice that we've got here the numerator and the denominator would be the same. We've got 5 out of 5 equal parts, and that is another way, when the numerator and the denominator are exactly the same, that's another way of saying one whole. Okay, so here we've got 5 out of 5 equal parts. When the numerator and the denominator are equal the same, then that's the same as one whole. If we look at the question before, we had our one whole, our 20, was split into 4 equal parts. So 4 out of 4 equal parts would be worth one whole. Okay, our last question. So here you can see our whole, or our rectangle, or our bar is worth or equal to 840. I'm going to show you the two questions. So what is 3/7 of 840? And what is 6/7 of 840? Now, if you want to press pause now and have a go at this on your own and come back, have a go. If you want to draw it out, if you want to get some coloured card and do what I'm doing just to help you represent it, then go for it. So if you want to press pause and then come back, and we can go through the answers together. Okay, if we're ready for the answers, I'm going to go through this a step at a time. So 3/7 of 840 or 6/7 of 840, it doesn't matter which one you do. Let's just do the first steps together. So first of all, we've got our whole, it's 840. How many equal parts is this going to be split up into? So 1 equal part, 2 equal parts, 3 equal parts, 4 equal parts, 5 equal parts, 6 equal parts, and finally 7 equal parts. So you should have noticed that both questions there was a denominator of 7, so your whole should have been divided into 7 equal parts like I've done here. Okay, that's the first step done. If we have a look at the question again, so we've got 3/7 is what we need to know, but first we want to know what is the value of one of these bars. So remember, our whole was equal to 840, and that whole 840 was split or shared Let me just write this down, that'll be easier to see. So we've got the bar is equal to 840 and it was shared between 7 equal parts. So 840 divided by 7. Now you can divide in different ways here. If you want to do a bus stop method, you can. Or if you just want to look at the numbers and say to yourself, okay, I know that 7 times 12 is actually 84. So if 7 times 12 is 84, it's not 84, it says 840. So that's multiplied by 10. So I have to multiply my answer by 10 as well, 120. If you want to check it by doing the bus stop method, and then you should check and see that your answer is also 120. So 120 would tell us that one of these bars is worth 120. That's the value of one of these blue bars. And of course, just to check, we could do 120 times 7, and that should give us the right answer. Okay, so once we've done these first vital steps, then we can look at the question. So we've got 3/7 and 6/7. So 3/7, we're looking at the numerator, and the numerator is equal to 3. So that means that we need the value, or we need to find what 3 of these bars are equal to. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So what we're doing now should be 120 times 3, and that would give us the answer. So 120 add 120 add 120 is equal to, of course, 360. Or another way, I'm pointing to here is just 840 divided by 7, and then we're multiplying it by 3. Okay, and the second question, 6/7 of 840, this can be done in 2 different ways actually. So both ways are correct, and it doesn't matter which one you do. So we're finding 6/7 of 840. So of course the numerator says that we need 6 of these bars, and that means we could do 6 times 120, and that should give us the answer. So we've got 120 multiplied by 6 for 6/7. Now, another way you could do it is just to recognise that if we're after 6/7, the question before that we had was only asking for 3/7, and 6 over 7 is double 3 over 7. So if we have double 3 is 6. So if one group of 3 is equal to 360, another group of 3 would then be double, so 720. So these are 2 different ways that you can look at it. So if we double 3, we get 6. That means we also then double the answer. Okay, here are some questions for you to have a go at and answer. They start off quite simple, and then maybe they get slightly trickier, but you shouldn't find them too difficult. And then I've got an extension question for you, and the answer to the extension question will be revealed after I show you how to make a giant cookie. Okay, so first whisk 2 eggs, add them to a mixing bowl, and to the 2 eggs you need to add 1 cup of melted butter. Okay, so next you want to add 1 cup of brown sugar. And 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Next you want 2/3 of a cup of caster sugar and mix it well. Next add in 2.5 cups of plain flour and then 1 teaspoon of baking powder. The next part is optional, adding your chocolate chips, nuts, whatever you want to add to it, to the mixture, and stir well. Here I'm just using some coconut oil spray so it doesn't stick. And now to decorate, you can use M&Ms or Smarties and just add these to the top. And now just place it in the oven for 20 minutes on gas mark 4.